Alright. This microphone's busted.
What was that about?
Good crossover.
Yeah.
How was yours? Long.
Yeah. All right, we'll go ahead and call the House Judiciary Committee to order at this time. I want to thank everyone for being here with us today, and we'll begin with our invocation. And Chairman Scoggins, will you lead us in prayer? Will you hit your button? Yes, sir.
Let's pray, please. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We know that all things are through you and by you. Give us grace and mercy today. We ask for wisdom in our decision makings and all things that we do today. Amen.
Amen. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I know we got several bills on the agenda. It's always like this right after crossover day. We got a lot of work to get to, and before we get in too far today, I want to recognize some of our special guests who are here with us. Judge Kelly in the back of the committee room here, and Judge Bearden as well. Honored to have both of y'all here. Judge Kelly from the coast and Judge Bearden from the Hall and Dawson County circuit. And Judge Bearden and I went to the University of Georgia together, so it's good to see you again, my friend. As has been said, if we need you to hold anyone in contempt in here today, we'll let you know, judges. So, how'd I do, Chairman Fleming? You did well. So we got a busy agenda today, and I always appreciate it when our members are here, and when they're already in the witness chair, it's even better. So thank you, Leader Hatchett, for being here. If you'd like to go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I bring Senate Bill 395. I'm going off of LC 490737. What this bill does is it adds a third judge to the Mountain Judicial Circuit. The Mountain Judicial Circuit is composed of Habersham County, Raven County, and Stevens County. According to the Judicial Workload Assessment Committee, there are 8 judicial circuits in need because they are, I guess, underjudged. And the Mountain Judicial Circuit ranks number 3 on that list. This is something that the Mountain Judicial Circuit, I believe, is at a 1.4, the number. So the judges in the Mountain Judicial Circuit are doing 40% more than the recommended caseload for a judge in the state. And because of that, they both wanted to be here, but they don't really get many days off. So I would ask for your favorable consideration for this bill. It's definitely needed, and just so the committee members know, this is in the budget. It was in the governor's recommended budget and is in the budget in the House and the Senate.
So I see here the letter from the Judicial Council. It's in the folders with the circuits. Number 3 on the list. We've approved judges already for 1 and 2 in House bills, and certainly I'm familiar with the need here. Have you received, Senator, any input from your local elected officials as far as the local supplement goes and their support for any expense that they may be required to carry as part of this?
They are all in support.
All right, very good. All right, and also I see Representative Anderson is here. I was told ahead of time that Senator Anderson was here. I said, I think he's maybe here on the wrong bill. I'm glad to see you, Representative, and we'd love to hear anything you want to share with us about this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if that would be a promotion or recommendation or what, but it's an honor to be
being
here.
in the House is always a promotion.
I agree.
That's clear.
It's an honor to be here, and I'm here today as a representative for not only Habersham County, but also as the former chairman of the Habersham County Commission. And at the time I was on the commission and chairman of the commission, we already had recognized the need for the third judge, and every year in anticipation, we're allowing in our budget at the time for the local supplement. The current commission unanimously endorses that also. So as Senator Hatchett had mentioned, I spoke with Judge Caudell last night. I believe Judge Smith was trying to get here today, and Judge Caudell did express his regrets for not being here, but because of that 1.4 ratio that they're operating under, both of them had obligations today. So I appreciate your considerable favor. Thank you.
Representative Anderson, I assume you're carrying the bill in the House? Or who's carrying the bill in the
I
House?
believe Judge Gunner is.
Okay. Great. All right, very good. Any questions? All right, very good. So at this time, I'll hear a motion on Senate Bill 395, LC 490737. Motion to pass in a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, very good. It passes unanimously on to rules, and I've got your Rules Committee form already signed right here, Senator, so you can take that up to the third floor.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Chairman. Thank you, members.
thank you all so much. Have a good day.
You too.
All right. Next bill we'll call is Senate Bill 543. Senator Halpern here. Take any time needed to get ready, and whenever you're ready, Senator, we'll hear from you on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am bringing before you Senate Bill 543, that's LC 490856. And this bill, like so many others, starts with a story. And this is a story where family members have experienced loss, not so much by natural causes or health or medical reasons, but by death, by tragedy. We have already, right now, in our law, provided that in every case of the homicide of a child, some party should be entitled to bring forth an action to recover for the value of the life of the child. The question, though, is that the law is silent on what happens when it is the parent who has intentionally caused the death of their child. Another statute prevents anybody who actually does a homicide. It says explicitly that they are not able to benefit from that. But those two provisions that are already in code can be at odds with each other because the part about the parent causing the death is the part that is not clear. And so that other statute, section 53-1-5, is known as the slayer statute, and it clearly defines that a slayer does not have the right to recover from the deceased estate. And so this bill is a very short bill, but it really does one thing, and it closes that loop on the slayer statute and points it back and says that no matter who it is that is responsible for the death of another person, even if it's a parent in the case of a child, they are not able to benefit from that killing.
Yes, ma'am. We'll hear from you as well. Anything you'd like to share?
Certainly. Good afternoon. My name is C.K. Hoffler. I'm a practicing attorney here in Georgia. I've been in practice for 35 plus years, which is interesting. I like to say I'm 37, but really it's 35 plus years. And part of my practice areas really includes catastrophic injury work. And I've seen this at play. And as a practicing lawyer here in Georgia, I've seen the difficulty and been with families that have to suffer through the reconciliation of what the wrongful death statutes provide when there's the death of a child and what the slayer statute provides. And so I want to first thank Senator Halpern for what she has done, the work that she's done in the Senate, and also Representative Bonnie Rich for working so hard with us here in the House, because this is really, really important when it comes to those parents. It's the kind of thing that's horrific where I sit, where I'm counseling a parent who may have lost their child or their children at the hands of their spouse or their former spouse. That's sort of a very, very difficult position to be in, even as a practitioner of 35 years. So what this bill does, it brings them together. It codifies really what the case law is, and it operates in the spirit of what I know the statutory construction was designed to do, which is to not allow, as the slayer statute states, someone who is involved in a heinous crime and kills his or her children to benefit from that death. So I again applaud all of the magnificent people who have worked with this as a practitioner. It's a difficult discussion that I have with my clients when I have to explain to them that they're in for a lot of litigation and a whole long process that could be simplified by the passage of this law. And so I just want to thank you all for hearing us out.
So just a question along those lines. Is it, you mentioned case law, this may be in line with case law. it was my understanding that there is some uncertainty right now. If this horrific circumstance were to arise, that there may be a claim that the person even convicted of these murders could make to have an interest in the assets of the deceased children. Is that correct, and is that one of the reasons that this legislation is needed?
Absolutely. That's a consideration. But if you look at the Slayer statute that says categorically, if you are responsible for that intentional act, you cannot benefit. That's where it just needs clarification, which is what this law does.
I see. All right. Thank you very much. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Counselor, I too was trying to understand the scenario that we would be in here, and I was trying to think through it and correct me as I try to figure this out. But a parent slays a child. The other parent maybe brings a wrongful death action, and the parent that actually did the killing joins in and claims the assets that may come from the wrongful death statute. Is that what we're trying to prevent?
That is exactly what we're trying to prevent, because right now that could be a scenario. Now, through the litigation process, when you join in the Slayer statute, it may reconcile itself out. But there's a long, arduous task that's very painful for the family when, in the final analysis, the legislative intent was not to enable anyone who was involved in the actual slaying to benefit.
So is what we're doing here preventing that person from joining as a party to the action? Is that what we're going to pass here?
That is exactly what you're going to pass. And it also prevents that person from serving as the personal representative of the estate of the child that they actually...
Which is current law, right?
Right. They would have the ability to do that.
So we're just saying that if a parent slayed the child and the other parent brought a wrongful death action, you can't join in as a party at all. We don't have to put up with you being there, basically. Is that
Absolutely. And you can't benefit from your wrongdoing.
And although it's not enumerated in the bill, it references these code sections, and that all those code sections are the wrongful death statutes.
That is correct.
Also, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
So I think, Representative Fleming, there is one, I'll leave your mic on in case you want to have a dialogue about this, but I think there is another potential circumstance, and that could be a circumstance where the children actually have assets or have some sort of interest in some funds. And the estate of the slayer seeks an interest in those funds. That's another circumstance
So,
that might come up.
and I see, Mr. Chairman, we have Title 51(2) provisions. I assume that's the wrongful death part. What is Title 19 there?
So Title 19, we've got Title 19-17-1, and then we've got Title 53-1-5. So
Domestic relations.
19 is domestic relations?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
because the way that you could have ostensibly a parent who does the slaying, who dies or who survives. If the parent dies, then that parent's estate would still benefit from the slaying of that parent's children.
And this would prevent that?
That would prevent that.
Okay. And case law already does that, but we're cutting that off at the start by not having it be a something the court has to rule on. Is that what we're doing?
Exactly, because it's unclear, it's just murky, and
Okay.
ultimately you get there, but it just makes it, and I know this from personal experience with my clients, a
Right.
very, very arduous task when you've already lost your children or your child,
And you
and
have
then
to
you've
go
got to
through
go through
discovery or
all of
something,
this
yeah.
for really no good reason, since the legislative intent was designed not to allow someone to be able to identify, to benefit from committing this heinous crime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. Representative Evans. Representative Walensky.
Hey, thank you all so much for being here today. I'm also a serious injury wrongful death attorney. I just wanted to put that on the record. I'm just kidding. But isn't it true that this is just codification of case law and making it? It seems there was one example where an aunt killed a child, and in the estate, the father asked for the money, and the aunt actually entered into the case to get some of the money, and there was confusion. So we're just clarifying based on case law and making the code continue as it should.
Absolutely.
Representative Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would this extend to anybody that has parental powers, or is it just biological parents?
Well, that's an excellent question. But I think because of by virtue of what the statute, if you qualify as a parent, it really is a biological parent. That's what it's intended to cover. But ostensibly, I mean, if we took it out to its logical conclusion, if you are deemed a parent under the law, then it would apply to you as well.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions. I will hear a motion if there is one. All right, there's a move to pass and second on SB 543 as passed out of the Senate. That's LC 490856. Any discussion or amendments? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good. It passes unanimously. And Senator, I think you have set some sort of speed record getting a bill passed. I think it was first read in the House yesterday and is
Thank
passed
you
out
so
of committee
much.
today. So well done.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you your Rules Committee form right here so you can submit that to the House Rules Committee.
Thank you so much.
And just know this was mentioned. Is Chairwoman Rich your House sponsor
She
on the
is.
legislation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much for being here. All right, very good. All right, Senator Tippins here. Yes, sir. Senator, I didn't see you. Apologize. If you'd like to come on forward, we would like to hear from you on SB 493.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very simple bill. Some of you have seen it before. It is a bill creating the Honorary Office of Solicitor General Emeritus. It has some requirements in there. They had to have served as a Solicitor General, and with 20 years of credible service as a prosecuting attorney, there's no special benefit to this. This is an honorary title that's conferred upon them. It's patterned almost verbatim after the same statute that deals with district attorneys. And I'd ask that you pass it in honoring those solicitors who have served us so well all throughout the state. I think we had one that just retired from Jeff Davis County and Appleton County, I think, that served for 24 years. So they've served honorably and well. I'd ask your passage of the bill. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? So, Senator, I believe you mentioned this, but this tracks very closely with the District Attorney Emeritus language that's already in statute. So
Exactly.
It's consistent.
I mean, the only thing that's changed is it's Solicitor General instead of District Attorney.
All right, any questions? All right, seeing none, I'll hear a motion on SB 519. Is there a second? All right, any discussion? Further amendments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, it's on to rules. And Senator, I just want to know that this may be last time we see you in House Judiciary Committee. I want to thank you for your honorable service. And you know, I've heard the news of your retirement with great sadness here, but I know that with the fine, outstanding work you've put in here at the state capitol, that you have an amazing record and career that your constituents know about and has benefited everyone in the state of Georgia. So I just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. It's been a pleasure to serve most of the time.
Well, I'll give you your Rules Committee form, so getting that won't be unfavorable. So thank you so much for being here.
I would also like to ask, if I may, Representative Gunner, since you've served as prosecuting attorney, I would love for you to carry this bill.
Absolutely. My honor.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very good. We'll put him down as a House sponsor. Yeah. Hard to say no when the camera's on you, huh? All right. Yeah. All right. Speaking of Chairman Gunner carrying bills, let's now talk about SB 493. Senator Mullis is in meetings right now, unable to be here, and I told him it was fine to have a House member present the bill.
And this is the same bill that I presented, 1088, a while back. It's word for word, no different.
So this is the non-judicial foreclosure of timeshares.
Right.
We discussed this extensively, had several hearings over it, and the Senate, in their infinite wisdom, decided to copy the House bill and pass that out as well. All right. Any discussion about that, further discussion about that issue? All right, hearing none. All those, or is there a motion on Senate Bill 493? Second. Is there a second? All right, any discussion? Assuming that button was pushed as an accident. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, very good. It's on to the Senate. On to rules. All right, so the final bill we have to take up is Senate Bill 332, and Chairman Albers is here. Good to see you, Mr. Chairman. And before we get started, Chairman Albers reached out to me and sent me a letter when this passed the Senate, and very early on in the legislative process, his office was actively reaching out about the bill. So I know it's early, it's just crossover day, but I wanted to go ahead and present you, Mr. Chairman, with the 2022 House Judiciary Persistence Award. So you have, the verdict is in, you've already won, so congratulations. Yeah.
Can we get a picture later together?
Yeah, absolutely, I would hope so. You can go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that more than you know, and thank you to your august committee. Senate Bill 332 is the Georgia Informed Consumers Act. This is a great piece of legislation that is mirrored off of current federal legislation, and it's 98% similar. The only changes are we don't have some things in the state government that federal does. Thank goodness. This addresses a serious and growing problem that you are well aware that we passed kind of a first portion of this, which is organized retail crime. It accounted for $69 billion, that's with a B, in losses nationally last year. You have seen this on television and on the internet, where folks are doing everything from smashing and grabbing in shopping malls, in hardware stores, in drug stores, to those who are breaking into logistics facilities or stealing tractor trailers. This happens in every one of our districts. Doesn't matter whether you're urban, suburban, or rural. It's devastating to the people that own those stores, the people that work in those stores. It costs jobs, but ultimately it also costs the consumers, especially in a time where we're living in skyrocketing inflation. People need to know what they're buying and who they're buying it from. Doesn't matter whether they're buying a hammer, they're buying groceries, or baby formula. Similar to metal theft and pawn shops, which many of us in this room worked on over the years, we're not going after necessarily a shoplifter. We're going after the organized criminals, those who are theft for greed, not necessarily for need. These are anonymous sellers who are taking all that stolen property I just talked about and taking it online, because it's a lot easier to do it that way than to go into a pawn shop or metal theft, where we've required an awful lot of information to assure that the bad actors could no longer perpetrate those crimes. Organized retail crime is where sophisticated criminals, I call them kind of the modern day mob, if you will, use retailers kind of as an ATM. This is where the drugs, the violent offenders, the gangs, and the human trafficking are doing their business. Gangs account for 70 to 90% of the crime, violent crime that we have in our state right now. And they are using this as one point in order to fund a lot of their activities. This is professionals. Make no mistake, this is not a couple of folks hanging out in the street corner. And what they end up using, though, is some of our most vulnerable citizens to perform their tasks for them. It's time the professionals who do this assume the same risk, and we're targeting those professionals. Criminal professionals. Now, we all know Georgia is the #1 place to do business for 8 years. It's a record, and we're very proud of that. But we want to make it very, very clear. We are also going to be the worst place to commit a crime. We're going to make sure that we go after these folks, and if you commit organized retail crime in Georgia, you'll have the right to remain silent and be placed under arrest. This legislation, in a nutshell, is going to protect consumers by requiring online marketplaces. We all know who they are. They're the Facebooks of the world. They're the Googles of the world, the Etsy's, the eBays. Good companies, but making sure they're not being used for the wrong reasons. By requiring the people that are going to sell stuff there to do very, very basic things. And I'll talk about them in detail later, but having a government ID, a tax ID, bank account information, etc. It is important to note, and I know some of my friends behind me who represent some of those companies are likely to come testify in this bill. But the federal bill was endorsed by the very companies that they represent. So let me take you through the bill very quickly. Although it's big in size, it's very focused in its content. Section 1 obviously is the name, the Informed Consumers Act. Section 2 is all the definitions. I'm just going to highlight a few of those. One of them is, what is a high-volume third-party reseller? So this is not your next-door neighbor whose grandmother had an old dresser that they repainted and put up for sale on eBay. These are people that are selling things and doing more than 200 transactions per year and $5,000 in gross revenue per year. As an example, if I get a new drill for Christmas and I already had one, I might want to put it up for sale on Facebook Marketplace. However, if I put 127 new ones in the box up for sale, something's wrong. It defines what online marketplaces are. Obviously, we talked about what they are: Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Etsy, and many, many, many more. Those are just the popular ones that most of us either use or have heard of. It defines who the sellers are, but also who a third-party seller is, who's the indirect seller of a good. It also talks about the verification of making sure it's a real person. What we have found is those retailers, online retailers, sometimes weren't looking back to make sure it was a human being. It was a fake name, sometimes with an address that was a vacant lot in Montana. Well, that's not a real person selling goods. Why is this so important? As an example, people have stolen tractor-trailer loads of baby formula. And if you know anything about baby formula, you know that can't sit out for months and months on end in extreme heat and extreme cool. And what happens then, all of a sudden it goes online, it's brand new baby formula. And this has happened, folks. And we have put infants' lives in mortal risk because of these crimes and not following through with where it's coming from. And as a consumer, we deserve to know what that product is and where it came from. It talks about basic data collections on line 55 to 75. The same information you're going to need, because if you're online, you're going to have to give basic information like you would for anything else. Your bank account information, how you're going to get the money received to you, your contact information to assure you've got a business name, a working email, a working phone number, a real address, a business tax ID if you're an LLC or you're incorporated or you're an LLP. Again, this is the same stuff we do when you go into a pawn shop or the work we did to pass metal theft legislation years ago. They're going to certify and do this on an annual basis. And if for some reason they don't follow through, they'll be suspended, but they have 10 days in order to fix that. Now, one of the questions you might hear or comments from my friends behind me is, oh, you need to give them more than 10 days. If you are selling things online and you're not looking and checking in a 10-day period, you've got bigger problems than to update this. So 10 days is probably 9 more than is needed. Verification is to make sure that they're verifying, again, these people are real. And then disclosures to customers. This is, again, very important. I want to make sure that I know where that was from and who I am buying it from. In 118 to 122, it's a disclosures. So as an example, I go to buy something when I'm online. I want to make sure that I am getting it sold by this specific fulfillment area. And that can't change throughout the process the last minute and change it from whom I thought I bought it from, and then I yet received it from somebody totally different. Continuing on, data privacy, which is lines 163 to 170. This is all the typical safeguards you'd want into place so your information is not used for any other purpose than for what you're using it for, as well as those who are selling. And then in 171.185, this is great work in concert with our Attorney General's office. I want to thank Attorney General Chris Carr for his work and his office's assistance in this. This allows them to bring a civil action against online marketplaces. This is, again, very consistent with the federal legislation. This does not prohibit, though, and this is important, any local district attorney, law enforcement officer, or any other agency from initiating a court proceeding against an online marketplace if they are breaking the law. This would become effective on January 1st, not the traditional July 1st of this year, to give time for everyone to do this. And again, as I wrap up, I want to address proactively some questions you might hear. The first one is, well, if there's a federal law already in process, why do we need a state law? well, you'd have a lot of confidence in the federal government right now than I would that they would get anything passed in our lifetimes. And we need to make sure that Georgia companies and Georgia consumers are protected now. We mentioned about the 10 days. And last but not least, the folks that supported this law on a federal level should certainly support it on a local level. And this will not stifle. It will continue to encourage innovation and stay ahead of the bad guys and protect Georgians. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would yield for questions.
Are there any questions? Representative Bruce.
Yeah, I don't remember where I saw it, but in here you have that you would require they have a phone number. But I want to challenge that. Having a phone number by itself is kind of irrelevant because they could have a phone number and have an answering machine attached to that phone number that nobody ever answers. So I would, at the appropriate time, recommend that you add to that there be a person on the other end of that phone call to talk to somebody.
So Representative Bruce, we are not going to vote the bill today. I'll give you time to get with the sponsor to see if y'all can address that concern or if an amendment will be appropriate.
Okay.
And I could very
Yes, sir,
briefly
please.
answer. Thank you, Representative Bruce. Always a pleasure to be working with you. In this case, that is just one of all the other components of contact information they have to have, right? Including an email address, including bank account information, including tax ID numbers, etc. So there are multiple ways for which to contact that individual. While I agree with you, I'm not sure we could legislatively say they'd necessarily answer the phone call, but they would be suspended from doing work if they do not fill this out and they have complaints against them.
Okay, we'll
Thank
get
you.
together afterwards. And
Thank
talk
you.
about it.
Representative Albers, I really appreciate, Senator, excuse me,
Thank you
Chairman,
for the promotion.
trying to give you a promotion, yeah. Want to thank you so much for your presentation today. We have several witnesses who are lined up. I will also say that we have received some input on a specific provision which is included in a substitute that's before you here. It's lines 18 and 19, but there are no other changes to the bill as passed out of the Senate. And just for the purposes of discussion, we wanted to isolate some of the language input that we had received for today, and I think we have a copy of the substitute there for you. Okay, so if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, you can maybe sit aside and we will start hearing from witnesses. First witness I have is, yeah, go ahead, sure.
You said the sub we have in front of us as language on line 18 and 19?
Yes.
What does that do?
So, 118,
I'm sorry,
119.
118.
What did I say?
What is that?
118 and 119.
What does that do, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, so what it does is it requires that there be a, if you look back to line 112, it says unhindered communication.
Yes, sir.
And the question is monitoring in the chat option that some of these marketplaces have, is that appropriate or permissible? And this would allow monitoring by these companies in that chat feature.
Okay, seems like
Yeah.
an improvement.
Yeah, I think the thinking there is you wouldn't want the chat feature used for some illicit or improper purpose, and that monitoring under those circumstances would be reasonable.
Gotcha,
So-
thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. All right. Mr. Chairman Mullis, I see you coming in. It's an honor to have you back in House Judiciary Committee as always, and I know that you've been doing important work on the budget and many other things today, so I'm pleased to tell you that you are always welcome here in Judiciary, but your bill has already been passed out today. So.
I got it out for you.
I was just saving the House's position on all their money-related funding in the budget. So
Thank you. For those online, he was looking out for the House in budget negotiations right now. Grateful for you, Mr. Chairman. It's great to see you as always. All right, so we'll go ahead and hear from our witnesses. First one I'll call is Servando Esperanza online.
Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Servando Esparza, and I'm TechNet's Executive Director in the region. TechNet represents over 90 companies, including several online marketplaces and sites with product listings, including eBay, Etsy, Amazon, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, and Google Shopping. TechNet's concerns with SB 332 are that small businesses that sell their products online should not have to comply with varying regulatory regimes or different disclosure requirements, which can be a barrier for them to sell their products online. As the author mentioned, this is very similar to a federal bill that has already passed the U.S. House. However, this version, including the change that were just made in the committee substitute, is not fully aligned with the federal bill. I want to flag one key difference. The federal bill requires that the seller disclosure information be posted after a sale has happened. Senate Bill 332 requires that seller information be posted on the product listing page. That's important to ensure that a seller's personal information for that information to be protected from broad public display and prevent off-platform communications, which puts buyers and sellers at risk of fraud, harassment, and other harms. The amendment that was just made about monitoring, that's important, because if some of these conversations, this interaction happens offline, that the online marketplace is not able to track what happens, and instead of being able to flag fraud or any other issues, they don't have visibility to that. Deviating from the language in this bill, risk confusion for sellers, this would apply for Georgia sellers. So those small sellers, which, by the way, the threshold is 200 sales. That's roughly 4 items sold a week. This would apply to Georgia sellers, but would not apply to Florida sellers. They rejected a bill just a couple weeks ago. And I know I've been talking about, why we oppose this bill, and not, what other, productive, what else could we do about this problem? Because we agree organized retail crime is a problem. We share the interest of combating organized retail crime, but what we say that has actually worked in other states is creating a task force or some, looking into what tools prosecutors need. The theft, the smashing and grabbing, the theft that happens on, of cargo or other locations that was explained in the bill. There's actual task forces that have been created in a number of states, including Illinois, Utah, Arizona, Florida, and Connecticut, which actually bring folks together to make some of these big investigations, and have recovered millions of dollars in stolen goods from storage units, semi-trailers. And so, we have issues, especially highlighting that the disclosure of some of the personal information is included in a product listing, which is not part of the federal bill, but also would say that in making an actual progress against organized retail crime, we think a task force is a lot more appropriate. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
We don't have any questions. Thank you very much. Oh, Representative Fleming. Actually, we do have a question. Go ahead, sir.
And I'm sorry, what was your name again, sir?
Servando Esparza.
And what is your position with the company?
So I work for TechNet, which is a tech advocacy organization, represents a number of these online marketplaces and other websites that have product listings.
So you have membership of several of the online companies that that you work for, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it looks like, and this is my first time looking at this, so I'm trying to educate myself, but it looks like, as I look through this, a lot of these requirements that would be in this law are things that your companies could do voluntarily. Am I incorrect on that?
I think that some of the largest companies in collecting information, absolutely. I'm not sure about the posting of information of the seller on their product listing. I don't think everybody does that.
But they could if they wanted to, correct?
They could, but they also want to make sure that their sellers are protected, and some of the contact information sellers may not want to put it on there.
Then they don't have to do business on that particular site if that's what they don't want, correct?
Yeah, that's up to the seller.
So my point is that I'd much rather you regulate yourself than us have to do it. But apparently, it's the failure of your industry to regulate itself that is part of the reason we're here today. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I think the premise of this bill are folks saying that, almost everything or a lot that's stolen is sold online. I reject that premise, and I would say that there are millions of sales that happen of regular items online that regularly happens. That in trying to attack organized retail crime, we think there's other methods that other states have done to tackle that. We have not seen that this will achieve that. And instead, I think why there's support for a federal bill is so that this isn't targeting, Georgia online sellers versus other sellers in other states.
And I would not disagree with your premise that if the federal government would do it, it would affect all the states equally and maybe better. But the bottom line is they haven't done it yet. And you made the point that someone may think that a significant amount of sales online are criminal. I don't begin with that. I begin with, even if it's 3 or 5%, that would be a tremendous incentive for organized crime to rob stores. That I'm sure most of the work that Home Depot, who is supporting this, apparently does. Most of the things they sell are not that leave their store are not stolen. But if just a small percentage is, it's a huge problem for the consumers that go in and the price that they have to pay for the goods. So what I would implore you, if you don't want us to pass this, come forward and do some things to give us reason not to.
Mr. Esparza, isn't it true that the bill that's before us only gives the option to provide that identifying information on the front end of the transaction? It could be provided after the transaction is made.
That is true, Mr. Chairman. The lines, I guess, in the LC that I have that's listed on the agenda, that is in lines 123 to 124. It says on the product listing page directly or via hyperlink, and then it also provides the option that it could be post-sale.
I guess my point is that if your concern is that the listing is there and available prior to the sale because it's on the listing page, that doesn't have to be done if this bill were to be passed. That information could just be provided after the transaction is made, correct?
Correct. And the point is, we've been working with this type of bill in other states. Those other states have modeled the exact same language from the federal bill on that. This is a departure of that.
Understood. Also, the language added into this substitute, which is in lines 118 to 119, which I discussed earlier, that is an addition that diverts from the federal bill as well, correct?
It is. It's something that both sides have talked about in a number of states because they see the potential for that unmonitored communication that could cause issues. So, it could be an agreement or it could be something that's a fix that's provided at the federal level. But I know that conversation has happened in a number of states.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to make sure committee members understand. Isn't it fair to say you are supportive of that amendment that's in lines 118 to 119, departing from the federal statute, but you are not supportive of the departure in lines 123 of the bill as passed out of the Senate? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, there's one more question. He waves. All right. Thank you very much, sir, for testifying.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Next up, we have Elizabeth Hunger online.
Elizabeth wasn't able to make it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no problem. All right. Next up, I have Carlos Gonzalez online. Mr. Gonzalez, we can see you, and we'll get you up here on the screen in the committee room. Very good. Okay, we can see you, Mr. Gonzalez. Would love to hear from you. And if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself and then share any testimony you'd like to provide to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. And my apologies for not being there in person. I would love to have been there today. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity today to testify on behalf of Walgreens in support of the Inform Act SB 332 in the state of Georgia. Walgreens helps support communities around the state, and we have over 270 retail pharmacies to help out the communities and residents. My name is Carlos Gonzalez, and I'm a major crimes asset protection manager for Walgreens. I've been in asset protection for over 23 years, and I have extensive investigating criteria and knowledge in organized retail crime. My job in major crimes is to prioritize the safety and security of our team members, customers, communities, and I conduct complex, high-level investigations into serial robberies, burglaries, brand integrity, fraud, and organized retail crime. I also help build and foster public-private partnerships to address and mitigate major crime trends. Within retail, Walgreens is a fierce competitor for business and sales, but we become a force multiplier with other retailers and work cohesively as one team when we identify and investigate ORC. We have ORC activity. We've seen it increase over time, but lately we have seen it become more brazen and violent in nature towards our team members, innocent bystanders, and even in the commission of the crime for these subjects. They're actually using pepper spray and other means in order to complete the commission of the crime. I can list a myriad of cases I helped investigate over time, bringing boosters and fences to justice. But the common theme amongst all of them is one, the efficacy in which the products are sold by the fences and purchased by the consumers may be compromised and kept in unstable conditions. And two, fences are becoming more savvy. They're using online platforms to sell the stolen products all over the country and remain anonymous. The Walgreens Asset Protection team helped investigate a group of boosters who were targeting Walgreens throughout the entire state. These boosters were actually targeting baby milk and other over-the-counter medicines. They were actually targeting the same stores very frequently. The stores were actually forced to adopt and implement high-level, high-risk protection devices to safeguard the product and keep it on the shelves for the good customers. But the boosters found a way to break into the cases and once again start stealing the merchandise all over again. Police later investigated and actually were able to find that these subjects were actually selling these items through various and many different platforms. For the reasons previously mentioned, we're asking for the support of the passing of the Inform Act, which will help resolve a lot of the issues I just mentioned, and selling a high-level and high-volume online sellers that are profiting from the sale of stolen merchandise. Thank you for your time today. I would love to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. We don't have any questions from the committee. We really appreciate you being here remotely. I know you flew into town expecting to be able to testify in person yesterday, and because the House started at 2, we continued the meeting to today. So I'm sorry we missed you in person, but we really appreciate you being here through Zoom, and I know the committee appreciates your testimony.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, next up we have Zachary Lilly. Yes, sir, if you'd like to come forward, please. Just if you'd introduce yourself, tell us who you work with, and provide any testimony you'd like to share.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the House Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. As you said, my name is Zach Lilly, and I'm the Deputy Director of State and Federal Affairs at NetChoice. We are a trade association with members like Etsy, eBay, OfferUp, Pinterest, Amazon, and others. I'm here today to ask you not to advance SB 332, the Informed Consumers Act. As a former resident of Roswell and someone whose family still lives in Georgia, I appreciate Senator Alber's attempts to address the issues of organized retail crime. However, this bill does not effectively tackle that issue. The bill proposes to take down complex and vast criminal enterprises by collecting the personal data of Georgia residents. Instead of focusing on the criminals or empowering law enforcement to attack perpetrators at the source of the crime, the bill places burdens on everyday Georgians trying to make an honest living. Etsy sellers like Peach Print Designs and the Lumen House, both based in Georgia. I also appreciate that the bill sponsors have worked in good faith to bring the text of the bill more in line with the federal version, currently under consideration. While that is absolutely a positive step, it still leaves your citizens vulnerable. Failing federal adoption, nothing will stop another state from passing a more onerous and hostile version of this bill. Companies, particularly smaller ones, will be forced to adhere to the most aggressive legislation, hurting the competitiveness of Georgia businesses. This bill is ultimately about trade-offs. Since the bill does not actually address the source of organized retail crime, you will be trading negligible results for a decrease in privacy, productivity, and independence of some of your most vulnerable citizens. In my opinion, that is not a trade worth making. Thank you again for your time and consideration of my remarks.
How would passing this legislation cause those impacts, have that impact for, say, a seller on Etsy?
Which impacts?
What you just described, issues of transparency, making, you said these vulnerable individuals will face harmful consequences as a result of passing this bill.
Sure. So I think the biggest concerns, as echoed by some of the folks who have already testified, is that while the state version reflects fairly closely the federal version, if, as has been pointed out, the federal government fails to do its job and Georgia moves ahead, other states, dozens of other states are considering similar legislation. Some have passed it, some have not. And those more onerous stipulations in other bills could be backdoored into Georgia if businesses are forced to, instead of the piecemeal approach, just taking the most onerous version of the bill and importing it into Georgia.
So if I understand your argument, it's Georgia should not act hoping that Congress acts, because if Georgia acts, another state may have a more onerous bill that's passed implementing those conditions on Georgia consumers.
Yeah, so from NetChoice's perspective, we don't feel that the bill effectively addresses the issue, but if folks are keen on moving on this bill, the only way to ensure that we avoid that patchwork is to pass it federally.
And does your organization support the federal legislation?
So NetChoice, as opposed to its members, has not fully endorsed the federal version. Many of our members have, and that's a difference of opinion. From our perspective as an independent organization, we just don't think it's the most effective solution to the problem.
All right, there are a few questions. Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lilly, correct?
Yes, sir.
And once again, to understand your group, you're an umbrella organization, trade industry group, and you have several of online sellers that are members
Correct.
of your organization. Okay, how many members?
I think, without having a specific number, I think we're ballparking 30 to 40.
And you're similar to the gentleman that testified earlier? And
Correct. TechNet is larger than us, but we are similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, the beer stores and the liquor stores in the state could do a whole lot more business if they didn't have to check IDs, you know, to see what the age of the person that was buying. But we do that. We put a requirement on them because the problem that would be created without doing that would be greater than the onerous requirement we may put on the business. How is this different than that?
Well, I would say if a seller is selling products that are age restricted, perhaps there are different requirements that need to be said. But I mean, for someone like an Etsy seller who's making blankets out of their house, you know, I just think the nature of retail is deeply complex, as everyone for and against the bill will attest to. So attempting to collapse the entire marketplace into a common denominator of it's just like one product or another, it just isn't. So that's what I would say. I don't mean to suggest that there should be absolutely no requirement at any time. You know, implementing sort of a Wild West approach.
What has your industry done voluntarily to curb this problem?
So, you know, I'm not an expert on every single choice that each member has made. I could tell you, as an example, Etsy as a platform requires that their sellers be the ones who have made or sell vintage goods, right? So you would never be able, for example, on their platform to resell a drill, right? So that's a fundamental difference of that particular platform. So that's another way I would emphasize that, again, the marketplace is varied. Not all of these online marketplaces are the same or address
Let me ask it this way then. Has your organization put forth a best practices suggestion for your members to follow to attempt to put a dent in the crime that we're trying to address here?
No, Net Choice has not.
Why not?
We're a pretty small outfit. I would be happy to try and get something like that off the ground, but I can't speak for the industry writ large in terms of, I'm not sure if that has been attempted, generally speaking. I'm just saying from our perspective, we have not done that.
It would seem from your response that this is just not high enough on your priority list, and I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get your attention.
Yeah, I mean, from a Net Choice perspective, I would disagree. It's just has not traditionally been Net Choice's role as a small organization to create those.
And my point is
on
maybe.
behalf of our.
And my point is, as I conclude, is maybe it should be.
Fair enough.
Thank you,
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two areas of questioning. First, your interaction with Representative Fleming led me to this question. You say you're a small organization, but you're here today. You've tracked this legislation. Have you appeared at other hearings, either federally or other states?
I have appeared 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in Maryland, but that's the only time that.
So you've been able to take time out to come and lobby against other people trying to solve the problem, but you haven't been able to take the time within your organization to try to address the problem. Is that correct?
I mean, I would not categorize it that way.
But that's a choice you've made.
Correct.
And then my second question is, you mentioned your concern for the privacy of Georgians who are just trying to make a living on these platforms. If I go into CVS or Home Depot in person, I buy something and I have a problem with it, they don't get to hide their identity, right? I can go back and complain to them. You would agree with me?
To Home Depot, yeah, sure.
And if I buy something online from Target or Home Depot or another big retailer, again, I know who to go complain to if I have a problem. Is that right?
Sure.
Why should any other seller be able to exempt themselves from a buyer having a problem with their product? Why should they be able to hide?
Well, I would say, again, without knowing the policies of every single online marketplace, but some of the largest players certainly have a way in which you can attempt to be made whole as a customer. So it would go through the marketplace itself as opposed to the individual seller necessarily.
But can you think of a good reason why any seller should be able to hide from their buyers and correct problems?
I mean, yeah, in the way that you categorize it, I wouldn't say that a seller should ever hide from their buyer, but if it's an instance where the information is being used not in good faith but in bad faith, where it's not someone trying to hide from their buyer but trying to hide from somebody who means them harm, or if, say, an online seller is selling handmade political paraphernalia and, that runs contrary to someone who's now attempting to use their personal information to dox them, as an example. I just think those are different categories of instances. But no, I don't think someone should hide from their seller if that is a legitimate interaction.
Thank you.
Representative Walensky.
That last answer, I have so many questions now. I don't want to take too much time. Your last comment that if somebody has fear of placing an object in the marketplace that they should get privacy, why?
Well, no, my point was that there are particular things that someone might sell, like, for example, political paraphernalia, which would cause perhaps a negative reaction in perhaps a not particularly well-adjusted individual who would then attempt to use that personal information to call them or to...
Well, the people selling that item don't get privacy, so why should that person get privacy?
Sorry, I guess I don't understand.
The platform that's selling it doesn't get privacy, so why should the person creating it get privacy?
Right, yeah, I suppose, but there's a difference between Amazon as a large platform who can successfully, protect their staff from like that direct hostile interaction versus an individual seller who may be just operating a small business themselves.
I mean, a private seller could create a company and just, if they want to create something that they know is going to be harmful in some way or threatening or rile people up, they have ways to protect themselves by creating a company. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, of course, that is always an option available to you, but I think part of creating a positive business environment, as Georgia has successfully done, as was mentioned, you want to lessen the barriers. You wouldn't necessarily want to make it so an individual felt that they had to formally incorporate and go through additional barriers. But certainly, to your point, it is possible.
Georgia creating a positive business environment is allowing people who put harmful things into the market or that will get a negative reaction to have privacy.
No, I don't think those are necessarily related.
Me neither. All right. Thank you.
Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lilly, thank you for being here with us. I think every one of us who sits here has concerns about placing onerous burdens on small businesses. I think that's something that Georgia has been extremely deliberate about not doing, and a reason why we're the number one state in the nation to do business. I think we have a track record of that. I think we'd also agree that we want to address privacy concerns and maintain the safety of our citizens. I think we do a fairly good job of that in our state as well. There's pockets that don't. We're sitting in the boundaries of one. But in terms of the burden you says this places on small businesses, and help me just understand the business model. If I'm a seller, and I've never done this, so if I'm a seller on one of these marketplaces, how do I register with the marketplace? How do I create a profile, or how does that process work?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it would be more useful for me to follow up with a more robust answer, just because it's not a uniform process. Each individual company would necessarily require different types of information. So given that NetChoice represents many of those folks, if you want, I'm happy to send you that information or put you in touch with folks who could speak directly to their company's policies.
Because I'm just thinking through whenever I've had to register any account online, if it's as a purchaser, and I imagine it looks a lot the same for the sellers. You're asked for your name, your identifying information, usually asked for a contact number, usually asked for an email address, usually I'm asked for a physical address in some form. Almost every account I have on my online apps is asked for that, and I would assume that most of the marketplaces are collecting the exact kind of information that we're asking for in this bill, and so the burden is not on, in my mind, the seller providing more information. It's just simply on the marketplace providing that information. Would that be probably a pretty fair statement?
Yeah, again, so without collapsing each individual marketplace on top of each other, should a marketplace require all that information, then that difference would be more negligible than others who don't require that information. But yes, I think a key to moving forward, again, NetChoice just isn't, as you might have gathered already, jazzed about the legislation. But again, if you choose to move forward, I think it's key just ironing out the differences to ensure that type of information can be truly used to empower the consumer, as opposed to sit out online and be used against a small seller, which is obviously not the goal of anybody here at the dais and anyone who's introduced the bill here or in any other state.
Thank you.
Representative Bruce.
Yeah, one of the concerns I have when you can't talk to somebody and really get in touch with someone, a lot of these companies are asking for people to give them their credit card number or a debit card number or something, and if they don't get the item that they requested, or if it's damaged or whatever, it's already been deducted from their account, and then they can't get in touch with anyone to get it fixed. And the only recourse that they have sometimes is to stop payment on the card. and then you stop payment on the card, that company then says something about sends it into the credit reporting people, and your credit score gets changed or impacted negatively. So it just seems like it would be important to allow people to have some sort of a contact with whoever it is that they're purchasing from. And a lot of people think that when they buy something from Amazon, they're actually buying it from Amazon, but that's not true. Is that correct? They may be buying it from some third party that's just using Amazon as the vehicle to sell.
Right, yeah, there would be a difference between the payment processing system versus the seller itself. So yeah, the item itself would be being purchased not through Amazon necessarily, unless you're buying like Amazon Basics.
Yeah, so given all of that, again, I guess as everybody else is asking, wouldn't it be better to give the purchaser some sort of contact with the person or the company that they're buying something from in case there's any issue at all?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of online platforms, there are processes in place, but you would interface directly with Amazon, who engages with the seller on the back end. So you wouldn't necessarily, if there was an issue that arose, you would address it directly with Amazon. Yeah, so again, it's tricky from my perspective because folks do it differently.
And Amazon will tell you in a heartbeat, we're not selling that somebody else is actually selling it. They're just using us as a resource or a vehicle. But it just seems like, you would want to have direct contact with someone that you're buying something from, especially if you're doing it and it can impact your credit score at some point if you don't pay it because you didn't get the service that you want or get the product that you wanted or that it was damaged.
So, Mr. Lilly, I really appreciate you being here today. I just want to share with you what's on my mind and then give you a chance to respond in fairness. It just seems to me from your testimony that there's a real inconsistency here. So if your testimony today is that your organization doesn't necessarily formally support the federal legislation, but you're saying the state of Georgia should not take action on this until there is federal legislation that's passed, and that the potential harm is that some other state will pass some other bill, which would then, the conditions of which would then be imposed upon Georgia, which could occur anyway if that law is not preempted. And then on top of that, I wrote this down, you said that changes potentially need to be made to iron out the details so that we can make sure the information provided is actually beneficial to consumers in this legislation. In my mind, there's just layers of inconsistency here. It's, do you want federal legislation or not? Is the federal legislation that's proposed good or not? Do you want Georgia, if it is going to pass a bill, to mirror or model its bill upon this federal legislation? And then ultimately, are these requests for changes that we've heard about already through other witnesses an improvement or not on the legislation? And we don't have proposed amendments from you here today to make the legislation better. Just in fairness, I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to sure. how I've viewed your testimony.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that, and I apologize if anything I've said has been unclear, because that's certainly not the goal of coming down here and making myself unintelligible. From NetChoice's perspective, we do not feel that the INFORM Act at the state level or the federal level fully addresses the underlying problem of organized retail crime. So from our perspective, it is not a particularly effective piece of legislation. That being said, we recognize that a federally preemptive standard is less onerous and more effective, generally speaking, than the states implementing multiple different regulatory regimes. That's the only point that I'm trying to make here today, which is different than some of the other particular companies who have formally endorsed the federal bill. So I think that's the only actual degree of difference, is that at the end of the day, NetChoice just hasn't gotten there where we think, yes, that's a good bill that we formally support.
All right. You don't have any other questions. Thank you for being here
All right.
today.
Thank you, sir.
Next up is Louis Massey.
Mr. Chairman, you get his ugly partner in this
It's
process.
good to see you today, Mr. Watson. We'll hear from you.
Apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, John Watson representing Amazon. I will be very brief. Unequivocally, the substitute before you helps us fight bad actors. The reality is that if we do not have the ability to look at and monitor, to use AI and other tools to say when there is a buyer and seller that is talking inappropriately, let me be specific. A seller says, I see you just bought a chainsaw. I've got 3 with a serial number no longer on them. How about having this conversation over here offline? That's what the bill's trying to get at. That's what we all ought be about. So unequivocally, Chairman, from an Amazon perspective, that is an absolute enhancement to what we can do and should do to partner with the state. We, yes, prefer this to be a universal federal law. Let me be clear. However, should the state of Georgia, in her own right, pass a bill, we would be as hopeful as possible that it looks like what you put before this committee. And with that, I will be quiet.
All right. Very good. Any questions for Mr. Watson? Yes, you do have a question, Mr. Watson. Representative Leverett.
Sorry, Mr. Watson. I'm Rob Leverett. I'm from Elberton, and I'm old, and I don't understand any of this for the most part. So my question will probably be somewhat intelligible, so please be kind with your response. Do you feel that you would need some sort of statutory authorization to do some of the things you would like to do to try to intercept these kinds of communications that indicate criminal activity?
Representative, there is in our effort to be consistent in arguing that we want a bill that is as closely mirrored to federal law as possible. There is a term in there, word in there, unhindered communication. And an attorney general in the future perhaps could construe that we are, as an online marketplace, by monitoring direct electronic communication, that is hindered communication. And so we are putting a belt and suspenders on that one communication chain that makes certain that someone says wait a minute, you're hindering that communication. This makes it clear that we are fighting bad actors and fighting the principles of the bill by making it clear that that communication can be used to fight waste, fraud, and abuse. I hope is that?
Well, so are you? I don't know if and I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. So do you feel like the statute gives you some sort of authorization to do that which you would like to do to catch these kind of folks, but you feel like you have some inability to do now absent the legislation?
We are asking for no greater power to do what we feel we can do under law. We just want to make certain that it's clear that what our processes are don't hinder communication as is constructed in this bill.
So you're concerned this might prohibit you from doing something you currently do?
Correct, absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay.
Just to be clear, I want to make sure I understand that. So the substitute includes lines 118 and 119, and that would allow for the protection
of our activities, yes, sir.
To potentially monitor the electronic communication.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The substitute speaks to, and we are asking for nothing more than what is in the substitute.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
Just want to make sure I understood.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm asking for nothing more than the substitute presented today. I'm sorry.
All right. So you have a few more questions now, Representative Walensky. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You represent Amazon. In what capacity?
I'm a contract lobbyist.
Okay. What is Amazon, do you know their protocol in terms of deciding what can be sold online, especially like a shirt that's written something? At what point does it reach, what is their standard at what point it's like, okay, that's offensive or that's too much?
I'm sorry, sir. I'll have to
You-
follow up with
you don't
and
know
get
that?
someone directly
Okay.
involved in that process.
Okay, I just learned recently there are small outfits out there that want to send harmful. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I digress. Okay.
All right, any other questions? I
Thank
don't
you,
see
Chairman.
any. Thank you for your testimony. All right, next up, Stephen Lofton. Good to see you today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. If you'd like to just introduce yourself and please share anything you'd like to.
Yes, sir. I'm Stephen Lofton, representing the Georgia Retailers today. The Georgia Retailers is an organization that was started in 1961. It includes retailers large and small all across the state. Those retailers provide over 800,000 jobs at over 100,000 retail establishments, and they pay more than $20 billion in wages annually. Those retailers also collect and remit more than $6 billion in sales taxes to our state and local governments each year. I want to thank Chairman Albers, first of all, for sponsoring Senate Bill 332, and Chair Administration and the members of this committee for considering this important legislation. As you know, this subject isn't new. Retail establishments have been dealing with an increasing amount of organized theft of their products for years. It's only growing, and the General Assembly responded last year by passing one of the toughest organized retail crime bills in the country, which was House Bill 327, and we are very appreciative of that. So the idea that was stated earlier that this hasn't been addressed, or that you're not addressing it, that's incorrect. You've begun to address it, and Senate Bill 332 is the natural follow-on to what you did last year, and it's focused on the other side of the equation, the selling of these stolen goods. So hand power tools, makeup, food items, baby food has been mentioned, other things. They're sold to an unsuspecting public by using online marketplace platforms to create the appearance of a legitimate business. In the old days, before the internet, if somebody stole something, they had a couple of different ways they could fence it. They could, do it as has been mentioned through a junk dealership or a pawn shop, that sort of thing, or they would just set up in their van or a truck, right? And you knew when you approached that van or that truck what you were getting. It was either stolen or it was counterfeit. That was not a legitimate marketplace. But you go on an online marketplace, and they do a fantastic job. I mean, they're providing an amazing service, and we've all used that service, I'm sure. But you can go on that online marketplace, and it says Amazon or eBay or Etsy, and it gives the appearance of a solid, respectable, reputable company, because that's what those companies are. And so what's happening is these thieves, and understand, we're not talking about your street level criminal here. This is organized retail, but it's not just retail. They're using the profits from this. These are gangs that are using these profits to then delve into or fund other criminal enterprises as well. They don't just stop there. But they're using the headline, the Amazon or the eBay, to give the appearance of a reputable business, and they're not. And so what all we're asking you to do is for the online marketplaces to know who they're providing that to, who they're providing that service to, and then to provide the consumer the information they need if they want to learn more about who they're shopping from. And that's exactly what Senate Bill 332 does in a nutshell. I won't go through the details of the bill. Y'all have done an amazing job of going through it already and asking very relevant questions. In fact, I was going to point out the OR on line 124 that made it permissible, but you beat me to the punch, Chairman, so I don't get to score that point today in committee. I do want to address one thing that the last speaker brought up, and it's this idea that if Georgia does something, that we need to wait for the federal legislation, that sort of thing. Let's be clear that that's the more states that pass legislation that looks similar to this, the more pressure will be brought on the federal government to do something about this. And so I would argue the opposite of what he argued. I would argue that if you pass this, you're helping to pass legislation at the federal level. Chairman, I'll in my testimony there, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lofton? Well, I don't see any. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
being
much for
here
your
today.
time.
Next up, Kelly Harrington. Yes, please. Yeah, please. Hello, sir. Good to see you today. If you'll just introduce yourself and then share anything you'd like to the committee.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today, and good afternoon, Chairman, Administration, members of the committee. Very good to be here today with you all. My name is Kelly Harrington. I currently lead the Southern Division Investigations team for the Home Depot. That entails everything organized retail crime as well as large-scale internal theft. And first, we want to express our gratitude for your support in last year's passage of House Bill 327. With this type of legislation, we can begin to hold accountable the criminal actors who are negatively impacting our business financially. And it's a great first step, but we're not done yet. Home Depot is not relying only on you to help with this problem. We're working hard internally in our stores. We've continued to innovate with new technology, analytics, hardware solutions. You guys have probably seen the lockup cages in our aisles that keep the merchandise on the shelf for the good customer to buy, keep it in stock so that it's available when they come into the store while keeping it out of the bad actors' hands. We've also tested locking carts and limited egress gates that prevent the flow of traffic for bad customers to get out of the store with merchandise. While we continue this innovation, it's not enough to control the rapidly increasing problem of organized retail crime. The outstanding opportunity is the emergence and ease of access to these online marketplaces with little to no accountability. We call what we investigate on these marketplaces fencing operations, and it is truly someone who may start legitimate and then they turn bad. They start buying stolen property and selling it off because it's easy to do so, and there's very little accountability measures, so it's easy for them to hide behind these big web-driven platforms. These marketplaces are a great outlet for the secondhand consumer market, but they need accountability measures to drive the honest seller's business while keeping the bad actors out. Today, if you think about pawn shops as a comparative example, individual identification and reporting is readily available for all sales in a database that law enforcement has access to. On the e-commerce side, we don't have that benefit. Anyone can sell stolen goods without accountability. We need a standardized process that lets us know what data will be captured by these marketplaces, where it will be stored, and how we can access it, whether that's law enforcement subpoenaing the records or in partnership with a retail business entity who can obtain those records to conduct an investigation. Whether you're a concerned consumer or a retail theft investigator, disclosure of who the seller is with a valid identity should be available throughout the process of a purchase or a shopping experience online. This bill does not hurt or slow down honest sellers. It simply drives accountability and common sense business documentation for all sellers while offering the benefit of deterring criminal behavior. We at the Home Depot ask for your support in Senate Bill 332. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Hudson, I see you were on the witness list next. Anything you'd like to add?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brian Hudson, and I'm here with Kelly on behalf of the Home Depot. I just want to add a few things, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. I just want to kind of give a snapshot. I think everybody here knows Home Depot's worldwide headquarters is in Georgia. Proud to call Georgia home. We're the home team, so to speak. But just to give you a snapshot, we continue to grow in Georgia. This is home, like I said. We've got over 35,000 associates, which is just staggering for just Georgia, and that includes stores, which is 90 stores, 5 distribution centers all over the state. We continue to grow in Georgia. I just want to comment, with that being said, on a few things that were said before. I think one of the gentlemen previously talked about a task force. We 100% agree with that. I think he said that a task force would be better than this. We 100% disagree with that. We are actually working with Attorney General Carr right now on putting together an organized retail crime task force. I actually believe the online marketplaces are part of that, and we look forward to continuing to work with General Carr on that in the future. We think that's really important to have that. And as Mr. Lofton said, y'all did a great job passing 327 last year as a major step towards cracking down on organized retail theft. And we thank you for that. It is very important to have that on the books in Georgia. This is kind of round 2, and then hopefully, if we can get this over the finish line, we'll be working with General Carr on the task force that will include GBI, it'll include sheriffs, it'll include various other entities, the prosecutors, to make sure that we're educating these folks on the new laws that are passing, so the prosecutors can use these tools to go after the bad guys. So I just want to reference that. I also just want to, real quick, on behalf of, if it's okay, Mr. Mr. Chairman. On behalf of CVS, we're fortunate to also represent CVS. CVS has 350 retail locations in the state with a little over 8,000 employees. And I think one thing is really interesting about CVS is every 3 minutes an organized retail crime event occurs in a CVS store, every 3 minutes. That's staggering. So this bill would certainly help not only CVS but all the other retailers, big and small, I might add, in the state of Georgia that are selling new and unused products. That's one thing I think, I'm not sure if that was referenced before with Chairman Albers, but this bill is referencing new and unused products, not used products. So if you have used golf clubs, whatever you're selling on eBay, that does not apply. So this is just new and unused products. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any questions for Mr. Harrington or Mr. Hudson? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. All right, next up, Wilkins, who is online.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Chairman, thank you for having me on. I apologize for not being there in person. I was here yesterday, and unfortunately, things got moved around, so sorry I missed you. I'm Glenn Wilkins, Director of Public Affairs and Government Relations for Walmart. We have since Brian mentioned it, I'll bring up the numbers as well. We have 215 units in the state of Georgia with over 70,000 associates in Georgia alone. We do have the unique situation where we actually have bricks and mortar as well as an online marketplace. So we actually fit into both worlds here. We believe that with transparency of the purchases for our customers is the best way that we can operate. We believe that the customer should know where their product is coming from. We believe that they should have the ability to contact the seller directly if they do have a concern. We also provide that opportunity for them to bring a product back directly to our stores, return it, get their money back, whatever avenue they feel is best. We also think that it's necessary that the customers know that they're buying a legitimate product. So if they're wanting to buy something that's from the USA, they should know this is coming from Georgia, North Carolina, whatever it is. There are many products out there online where they disclose that it is coming from China, Taiwan, wherever. That's fine, as long as the customer is making that conscious decision. We believe that's the way it should be. As far as the pre-disclosure goes and the transparency, and I know this has been brought up again, this is something we do on the front end. We disclose the seller's information on the front end so people can make that decision. Again, this isn't or, back to the chairman's point, right? We're not requiring anyone else to do that. This is an or that gives the marketplace to put that out there. We talk about the privacy of the seller. When you talk about the bank statements, you're talking about tax ID numbers, things like that. That is going through a payment processor. They are not, the seller is not collecting money from Walmart. The buyer is not sending money to Walmart. What is happening, me as a buyer, I'm purchasing through the marketplace to a payment processor, which then takes that information and then sends the money to the actual seller. The payment processor is the one who's holding on to that information. Honestly, we don't want to hang on to that information as well, because then we become liable for it. The payment processor, just like a credit card, is doing that. So that's what's happening as far as the privacy issue is concerned. Again, we work very closely with our retail brethren when it comes to asset protection. As Brian Hudson mentioned, we've sat down with the Attorney General. We've gone over the organized retail crime legislation, putting together a task force. We've had these meetings. We talk about best practices with everyone else in our business and see what we can do to prevent this. At the end of the day, we're there to make sure that our customers are safe and our associates are safe. No product in our store is worth the safety of a customer or an associate. But we agree there are things that we need to be done, or that we need to do there. Other than that, that's the nuts and bolts. I believe everyone else has covered it, and I'll take any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Mr. Wilkins? I don't see any. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, last witness that we have is Kathy Cuzava. Kathy, if you'd like to come on up. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kathy Cuzava, and I'm president of the Georgia Food Industry Association. We represent the supermarket industry across the state, and we have a few more members that sell food as well. This committee has asked the best questions, I'm going to brag for a minute, on any committee I have ever had. Y'all get this. I mean, you totally get this. So I am totally changing the way I'm going to talk to you because I don't need to sell you on anything. I'm going to just talk to you about the fact that you do every day work to help the most vulnerable citizens of our state through whether it's taking out the gas tax. I mean, we watch you do things to help the citizens of the state. Some of the most vulnerable citizens of the state, unfortunately, are having to see the inflation when they go to the grocery store, when they go to the gas pump. We've got a lot of issues that we're trying to deal with and trying to keep our prices low, which we do every day. And it's sticker shock on everything at our stores right now. So in passing this bill, you will be doing just one more thing in trying to keep, one more tool for us in trying to keep our costs down. I want to talk to you just a few minutes about baby formula. Several of the speakers have alluded to that, but that is 13% of, according to several studies, 13% of what's being stolen. And I want you to think about this. The Department of Agriculture regulates our industry to come in and make sure that we have got the proper temperature, that we can only buy formula through regulated wholesalers that have been absolutely had all of their resources also looked at, because they want to make sure that this is handled safely. Just a few weeks ago, we had a major recall on baby formula after 4 babies got sick with a bacterial infection. And I want you to think about the fact that in the grocery stores, in the drugstores, anybody in the state of Georgia immediately got that product off the shelf, immediately. Do you think that the people that have stolen that formula, and there was a bunch of it out there stolen, do you think that they pulled it off of their marketplace after that recall? So I just want to leave you with that. Passing this bill, Senate Bill 332, we appreciate you. This is just one more tool that you will use to keep the most vulnerable citizens in our state protected. Thank you so much. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you for all you do.
Here. Well, I want to thank the committee members for their attention today. I want to give you some scheduling info. I expect we're going to vote this bill Monday at 1 o'clock. So if you have any questions, need to get with the Senate sponsor or Representative Gaines, who will be carrying this in the House, please feel free to do so between now and then, or certainly come by my office if you have any questions about the language. With nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.